My family dragged me to court for not being a veteran until the judge said he saved me in Kandahar. I sat exactly 6 feet from the people who gave me life, watching them try to legally erase it. Courtroom 14B, Chatham County Superior Court. Tuesday, November 17th, 2:47 p.m. Overhead fluorescent lights buzzing like trapped insects. Cold air pumping through ancient vents. The smell of stale coffee and old wood and desperation. On the plaintiff's side sat Charles and Loretta Kincaid, my parents. Designer clothes. Perfect posture. Eyes that looked everywhere except at me. On the defense side sat me, alone. They were suing me for fraud. Civil court, $400,000 in damages, claiming I'd fabricated military service to steal from family trusts and access state benefits reserved for veterans. The civil complaint, filed by their attorney 3 months ago, alleged that I'd built my entire adult life on a pathological lie, that I was a con artist, a thief, a disgrace to actual service members. They didn't look at me, not once during the entire proceeding. Charles adjusted his silk Hermes tie, staring straight ahead like I was furniture. Loretta smoothed her navy dress, the one she wore to country club luncheons, and kept her chin high, martyred and dignified. Their attorney, Mr. Preston Sterling, smelled like expensive cologne and winning. He laid out their evidence with the confidence of someone who'd never lost. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sterling began, though there was no jury, just Judge Mendez, the court reporter, and a handful of people in the gallery. "The plaintiff's case is simple. Ethan Kincaid claims to be a decorated combat veteran. He collects VA disability. He receives preferential hiring status. He's accessed over $180,000 in state and federal benefits over the past 8 years. He clicked a remote. A PowerPoint presentation appeared on the wall screen. Yet, there is no photographic evidence of his service. No discharge papers in the family's possession. No public records accessible through standard military databases. No one in the Kincaid family, not his parents, not his brother, not extended relatives, can confirm he ever left the state of Georgia, let alone deployed overseas. The slides changed. Lists of names, unit rosters. My name wasn't there. He claims PTSD. He claims traumatic brain injury. He claims he served with the 112th Medical Evacuation Battalion in Afghanistan. But where's the proof? Where are the unit photographs? Where are the letters home? Where are the friends he served with?" Sterling paused for effect. "He has none, because it never happened." My throat felt like sandpaper. My hands were folded on the table in front of me, motionless, but my left knee bounced under the table. Nervous energy I couldn't control. The courtroom nodded along, because on paper, I didn't exist. What they didn't know, what I couldn't tell them, was that my unit operated under a provisional joint task force with classification levels that required security clearance just to access the roster. Classified routes, redacted missions, medevac extractions in hostile territory where using real names could compromise operational security. For 2 years, my identity wasn't Ethan Kincaid. It was Delta Romeo Echo. My service records were sealed under top-secret clearance. When the incident in Kandahar sent me home on emergency medical transport, my paperwork listed only my code designation and blood type. My discharge went through a completely different system than standard military processing, and I'd signed a non-disclosure agreement. I couldn't speak about names, locations, specific operations, or outcomes, not even to defend myself. To speak was to violate federal law and potentially compromise active operations. So I sat there, silent, not because I was guilty, because I was bound. The Kincaid family had always been about image. Charles Kincaid III owned 3 car dealerships across southern Georgia. Loretta sat on the boards of 4 different charities and hosted fundraisers at their 6-bedroom colonial in the historic district. My older brother Mason was the golden child. Duke University, finance degree, now working at a hedge fund in Atlanta, engaged to a senator's daughter. Everything our parents had dreamed. I'd been different from the start. I joined the Army at 19, right out of high school. Not because I was patriotic, though I was, but because I needed to get out. Needed to be something other than Charles Kincaid's disappointing younger son. My father had been furious. "The military is for people with no options," he'd said over dinner the night I told them. "You have options. You have a trust fund. You could go to college. You could work for me. But you're choosing to throw your life away. I'm choosing to serve. You're choosing to embarrass this family." Loretta had dabbed her eyes with a cloth napkin. "What will I tell the garden club?" I'd left 3 days later. I deployed twice. The first deployment was standard. Medical evacuation support, treating combat injuries, transporting wounded soldiers to field hospitals. 16 months. I came home different but intact. The second deployment changed everything. They needed medics for a classified task force, special operations support. I volunteered. Spent 6 months in training, then 14 months in country. I couldn't tell my family where I was going. Couldn't tell them what I'd be doing. The few letters I was allowed to send were heavily redacted. Entire paragraphs blacked out by censors. My parents stopped reading them after the 3rd one. When I came home in 2018, medical discharge, traumatic injuries, psychological trauma, they treated me like I'd been on an extended vacation. "You're back," Charles had said at the airport. "Good. Now you can get a real job." I tried to explain. Tried to tell them about the NDA, about the classification levels, about why I couldn't just produce normal discharge papers. "Sounds like excuses," he'd said. Over the next 2 years, I struggled. PTSD PTSD nightmares, chronic pain from the injuries, difficulty holding jobs. The VA helped. Therapy, disability payments, vocational rehabilitation. My parents saw it as freeloading. The lawsuit started because of Mason. He'd been going through family financial documents, preparing for his wedding, dealing with trust fund distributions, and noticed that I'd been receiving VA benefits. How is Ethan getting disability payments? He'd asked our parents over brunch at the country club. Charles had looked into it, requested my records, hit classification walls everywhere. There's no proof he even served, Mason had said. What if he's been lying this whole time? What if he's defrauding the government? That reflects on us. Loretta had been horrified. What if this gets out? What if people think we raised a criminal? Charles had hired Preston Sterling, the best civil litigator in Savannah, to get to the truth. They'd filed suit 6 months later. Fraud, misrepresentation, theft of family assets. Demanded I return every dollar I'd ever received from the VA, plus damages for reputational harm to the Kincaid family name. Mason didn't even show up to court. He'd texted me the night before. You're on your own with this one. Should have thought about consequences before you lied about serving. I'd stared at that text for 20 minutes, unable to form a response. During the lunch recess, I sat alone in the courthouse cafeteria. Terrible coffee, stale sandwich. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the cup. A paralegal from Sterling's office walked past, smirking. You know you're going to lose, right? I didn't respond. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just admit the truth and we can all move on. I turned off my phone. I'd tried to prepare a defense. Really tried. I'd contacted the Department of Defense 3 months ago, requesting emergency unsealing of my service records. They'd sent back a form letter. Request denied. Records remain classified. No timeline for declassification available. I'd contacted my former commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Bradley Harmon. He'd been sympathetic, but clear. I can't testify, Ethan. Everything we did is still classified. If I confirm your service, I violate my own NDA. I'm sorry. I'd contacted Veterans Legal Services. The attorney, a man named Gregory Walsh, who'd served in the Gulf War, had reviewed my case. This is a nightmare scenario, he'd said. You legitimately served. You legitimately earned those benefits, but you can't prove it without violating federal law. And if you violate the NDA, you could face criminal prosecution. So what do I do? Hope the judge understands classified operations. Hope she requests the records herself through proper channels. Hope the Pentagon responds in time. He'd paused. But honestly, the system isn't built for situations like yours. I'd shown up to court with nothing but the truth and no way to prove it. The afternoon session resumed at 3:30 p.m. Sterling called his first witness, Dr. Patricia Holbrook, a forensic psychologist who specialized in PTSD evaluation. She'd never evaluated me, but she'd reviewed the claims I'd made to the VA. Based on the documentation, she testified, the symptoms Mr. Kincaid describes are consistent with PTSD. However, they're also consistent with other conditions, anxiety disorders, depression, even learned behavior from exposure to media depictions of combat trauma. So he could have faked it? Sterling asked. Objection, I said quietly. I was representing myself, couldn't afford an attorney. Overruled, Judge Mendez said. Answer the question, Dr. Holbrook. It's possible, she said carefully. Without corroborating evidence of actual combat exposure, I can't definitively say these symptoms are genuine. Sterling smiled. No further questions. I stood for cross-examination. My legs felt weak. Dr. Holbrook, you've never met me, correct? Correct. You've never conducted a clinical interview? No. So your testimony is based entirely on speculation? It's based on the available documentation, which you just said could be faked. So your testimony is that my symptoms might be real or might be fake, and you have no actual evidence either way. She hesitated. That's a simplification, but accurate? Objection, Sterling said. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Mendez said. But she was watching me now. Really watching. I sat down. Sterling called his next witness, Mason Kincaid. My brother had shown up after all. He took the stand in his Brooks Brothers suit, looking every inch the successful son. He wouldn't look at me. Mr. Kincaid, Sterling began, you're the defendant's older brother, correct? Yes. During the time period when your brother claims to have been deployed, 2016 to 2018, did he ever communicate with you about his service? He sent a few emails, very vague, nothing specific. Did he send photographs? No. Did he mention the names of anyone he served with? No. Did he provide any details about his location or duties? No. He claimed it was all classified, which seemed convenient. My jaw tightened. In your opinion, based on knowing your brother his entire life, is he capable of fabricating an elaborate story for personal gain? I wanted to object. Didn't know the grounds. My legal knowledge came from Google searches and desperation. Mason paused. Then, yes, Ethan's always been creative. He struggled in school, never fit into the family. When he joined the army, I think he finally found something that made him feel important. I think he wanted to be a hero so badly that he convinced himself he was one. The courtroom murmured. No further questions, Sterling said. I stood for cross-examination. My hands were shaking visibly now. Mason, when I was in high school, what did I want to study? He blinked. What? What did I want to major in? What career did I talk about? I don't remember. remember. I wanted to be a paramedic, emergency medicine. I volunteered at the fire department. I got my EMT certification at 17. Does that sound like someone who wanted to be a fake hero? Or someone who actually wanted to help people? And when I came home in 2018, did you visit me in the hospital? His face flushed. You didn't tell us you were hospitalized. I was there for 6 weeks. Walter Reed Medical Center. I called Dad 4 times. He never answered. Did you know that? Your Honor, Sterling interjected. This is outside the scope. I'll allow it, Judge Mendez said quietly. Mason looked uncomfortable. I was busy with work. Too busy to visit your brother in a military hospital? I didn't know if you were really hurt or just what? Silence. No further questions, I said. The judge called a 15-minute recess. I sat at the defense table, head in my hands. This was going exactly as badly as I'd feared. Charles and Loretta huddled with Sterling in the corner. Loretta was crying quietly, playing the victim. Charles looked stern, righteous. Mason had left immediately after testifying. I pulled out my phone, checked my email. Nothing from the VA, nothing from the Pentagon, nothing from anyone who could help. I thought about the NDA I'd signed, about the men and women who'd served alongside me under those classified operations, about Lieutenant Mendez. I'd pulled her from a vehicle that had taken an impact from an explosive device. Her shoulder had been injured badly. I'd held pressure on the wound for 45 minutes while we waited for extraction, mortars lighting up the sky around us. Don't stop, she'd whispered, eyes wide with shock. Please don't stop. I won't, I'd promised. I've got you. She'd survived. Last I'd heard, she'd gone to law school after her medical discharge, but I had no way of knowing if she remembered me, no way of knowing if she'd even recognize my name. We'd used code designations in the field. The bailiff called us back. Sterling stood for closing arguments. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. The plaintiff has demonstrated that Ethan Kincaid cannot provide standard documentation of military service. He cannot produce fellow service members to corroborate his claims. He cannot even provide basic proof, photographs, letters, discharge papers that would be standard for any veteran. He gestured toward my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Kincaid are not vindictive people. They're concerned parents who discovered their son may have defrauded the federal government and brought shame upon their family. They seek only the truth and restitution for damages to their reputation. He turned to me. Mr. Kincaid has had every opportunity to prove his claims. He has failed. The court should find in favor of the plaintiffs and order him to repay all benefits fraudulently obtained plus damages. Thank you. He sat down. My turn. I stood slowly. My prepared notes felt useless in my hands. Your Honor, I served. I know I can't prove it in the way this court would normally require. I know how this looks, but I signed papers, legal, binding federal documents that prevent me from discussing the specifics of my service. Those restrictions exist to protect ongoing operations and the safety of service members still in the field. My voice cracked slightly. I've tried to get my records unsealed. I've been denied. I've tried to contact former unit members. They can't testify without violating the same agreements I signed. I'm trapped in a system that's protecting national security, but destroying my life in the process. I looked at my parents for the first time. I didn't fake anything. I served my country. I came home hurt, physically and mentally, and instead of support, I got accused of lying. I've lost my family over this. I'm about to lose everything else, but I didn't fake it. I sat down. Judge Mendez was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Sterling, she said finally, your case rests on the absence of evidence, correct? Yes, Your Honor. The burden of proof. I understand burden of proof, counselor. Her voice was sharp, but absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, especially in cases involving classified military operations. Sterling's confidence flickered. Your Honor, with respect, the defendant could have requested his records through proper channels. He did. I have his FOIA request in the case file, denied by the Department of Defense, twice. Sterling paused. Then perhaps the DOD has good reason to deny, or perhaps, Judge Mendez interrupted, the records exist but remain classified. She leaned forward. Counselor, I'm going to tell you something that's not in any case file, something you couldn't possibly know. The courtroom went silent. Sterling frowned. Your Honor, I served with him. Every head in the room turned toward her. 112th Medical Evacuation Battalion, Task Force Spartan, summer of 2017. Her voice was steady, professional, but there was steel underneath. The defendant pulled me from a vehicle that had been struck by an explosive device. He held pressure on my brachial artery for 45 minutes while we waited for extraction. We were under indirect fire the entire time. Absolute silence. Charles Kincaid's face drained of color. Loretta clutched her pearls, mouth opening and closing like a fish. Sterling looked like he'd been physically struck. Your Honor, he stammered. I had no knowledge that this seems highly irregular. What's irregular, Judge Mendez said coldly, is a family suing their own son for fraud when he's bound by federal law from defending himself. She held up a thick file I hadn't seen before. I contacted the Pentagon liaison office during the lunch recess. Based on the fraud allegations in this case, I requested emergency unsealing of the defendant's service record under judicial review provisions. General Patricia Zimmer granted it. My heart stopped. She opened the file. Ethan Riley Kincaid, enlisted July 2015, honorably discharged November 2018. 2018. Service medals include Bronze Star with Valor Device, Army Commendation Medal with Combat Distinguishing Device, Purple Heart, and 3 field recognitions for actions under hostile conditions. She looked directly at my parents. Everything you said he faked is now sitting on my bench as admissible evidence. The medals, the deployment logs, the after-action reports, the medical evacuation records from Kandahar with his name, blood type, and code designation. She turned to Sterling. Your entire case is based on the assumption that absence of public records equals fraud, but your client never bothered to consider that some military operations remain classified for legitimate national security reasons. They assumed their son was a liar because it was easier than believing he'd done something they didn't understand. Sterling tried to salvage something. Your Honor, with all respect, this disclosure, the timing, it could be seen as what? Justice? She cut him off. The defendant has been bound by federal law. He literally could not defend himself without facing criminal prosecution. This court has the authority to request classified records when necessary for judicial proceedings. I exercise that authority. She looked at me. I have the scar, she said quietly. I am the proof. The gavel came down. Case dismissed. With prejudice, the crack echoed like thunder. Furthermore, Judge Mendez continued, I'm ordering the plaintiffs to pay all court costs and the defendant's legal fees such as they are, and I'm recommending this case be forwarded to the Georgia Bar for review of Mr. Sterling's due diligence practices. Any attorney suing a veteran for fraud should verify the claims beyond, I couldn't find public records. Sterling's face went white. The courtroom erupted. The few journalists present were typing furiously. Someone in the gallery was clapping. My parents sat frozen. Charles stood slowly, stiff like his joints had rusted. Loretta's careful makeup couldn't hide how pale she'd gone. They looked at me, really looked at me. For the first time in years, they didn't see their son. They saw a stranger they'd catastrophically underestimated. Sterling packed his briefcase with shaking hands. Mr. and Mrs. Kincaid, we'll need to discuss next steps. There are no next steps, Judge Mendez said. With prejudice means this matter is settled permanently. They cannot refile. My father opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. We didn't know. You didn't ask, the judge said. Dismissed. As Charles and Loretta walked toward the exit, a young woman in dress uniform, a bailiff I hadn't noticed before, stepped into the aisle. She snapped her heels together and offered a crisp salute. I stood instinctively, returned it. My hand shook. She nodded once, then resumed her position. My parents saw it. That simple exchange, that recognition between service members. Loretta stumbled. Charles caught her arm. They left without looking back. Judge Mendez called me to the bench after the courtroom cleared. Ethan Kincaid, she said quietly. Or should I say, Delta Romeo Echo? I felt my throat tighten. You remembered. I remembered. She touched her left shoulder unconsciously. The scar aches when it rains. Reminds me. Lieutenant Mendez. It's Judge Mendez now. But I still remember the kid who wouldn't let go, who kept telling me stories about his hometown to keep me conscious, who promised he had me. She smiled slightly. You kept that promise. I didn't know you were in Savannah. I didn't know you were the defendant until I read the case file this morning and saw your service dates. When I made the connection, she shook her head. I've never been so angry at plaintiffs in my entire career. Thank you, I managed, for requesting the records. Don't thank me. You earned those medals. You earned the right to defend yourself. She paused. I'm sorry it came to this. I'm sorry your own family put you through it. Yeah, me too. She handed me a business card. Veterans Advocacy Group. They help guys like us navigate the system. The director is former Special Forces. He understands classification issues. If you need help, benefits, housing, employment, call him. I took the card. Thank you. Semper Fi, soldier. I was Army, ma'am. She smiled. Same difference. I walked out of the courthouse into the late afternoon sun. November in Georgia. Still warm, but with an edge of coming cold. My phone had 17 missed calls. Mason, Mom, Dad. Numbers I didn't recognize. I turned it off. I sat on a bench in the courthouse square and let myself feel it. The weightlifting, the vindication, the bitter satisfaction of being proven right by the one person whose opinion actually mattered. A woman from the local news approached cautiously. Mr. Kincaid, I'm Jennifer Morrison from WSAV. Would you be willing to comment on... No comment, I said quietly. But the judge's revelation, the classified service, this is a huge story. It's not a story. It's my life. No comment. She left. 3 days later, the article ran anyway. Local veteran vindicated after family lawsuit dismissed. They'd interviewed Judge Mendez. She'd gone on record. Mr. Kincaid served with distinction in classified operations. His family's lawsuit was based on ignorance of military protocol and a fundamental failure to support their own son. This case represents everything wrong with how we treat veterans who can't talk about their service. The article mentioned my medals, mentioned Task Force Spartan, mentioned that I'd saved the judge's life. By the weekend, it had been picked up by military blogs and veteran advocacy sites. The response was overwhelming. A law firm in Atlanta offered pro bono legal services if I wanted to pursue defamation claims. I declined. The VA called to apologize for the bureaucratic nightmares. They expedited my pending claims. A hiring manager from a local hospital reached out. They needed paramedics, preferred veterans. Would I be interested? I said yes. Mason called 2 weeks weeks later, I almost didn't answer. Ethan, his voice was tight. I need to talk to you. About, he paused. About being wrong. About everything. I didn't say anything. I saw the article. I saw the judge's statement. I saw the medals. Another pause. I believed them. Mom and Dad. I believed you were lying because they were so convinced. I didn't even question it. I know. I'm sorry. The words felt hollow. Too late. But I heard something underneath. Genuine shame. I don't know if sorry fixes this, I said. I know it doesn't. I needed you to hear it. We sat in silence for a long moment. They're talking about appealing, he said finally. They can't. Dismissed with prejudice. I know. But Dad's furious. The social fallout. People at the club asking questions. Board members raising eyebrows. He's trying to save face. By doing what? By claiming the judge was biased. That she should have recused herself. That the unsealing was irregular. I laughed bitterly. Of course he is. I told him to drop it. I told him he was wrong. Mason hesitated. We had a bad fight. I moved out. That surprised me. You moved out of their house? Couldn't stay. Not after seeing what they did to you. What I helped them do. I didn't know what to say to that. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Mason continued. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that not everyone in the family is that I see it now. What they did. What I did. Okay. He hung up. I sat there holding the phone, feeling something crack open in my chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the possibility of it. Someday. 6 months later, I was working full-time as a paramedic. I'd moved to a small apartment near the hospital. Nothing fancy, but mine. I'd started therapy through the VA. A good therapist, a former Army psychiatrist who understood combat trauma. The nightmares were less frequent. The hypervigilance was manageable. I joined a veterans support group, met other guys who'd served in classified units, who understood the impossible position of having your service erased by the very agreements designed to protect it. I wasn't healed, probably never would be completely, but I was better. My parents never apologized. Charles sent a terse email 3 months after the trial. The matter is closed. We will not be pursuing further legal action. Please respect our privacy. As if I'd been the one who invaded theirs. Loretta sent a Christmas card, generic, impersonal. Wishing you well in the new year. No mention of the lawsuit, no acknowledgement of what they'd done. I didn't respond to either.